here's everything you might have missed in The Mandalorian Chapter 15, The Believer. The penultimate episode of The Mandalorian Season 2 brought some explosive revelations and generally just a lot of explosives. While it may not have packed as much of a narrative punch as The Jedi or The Tragedy did, it does set the stage for what's sure to be an epic showdown in the season finale next week. Directed by Rick Famuyiwa, Chapter 15, The Believer, brought back some familiar faces and unearthed some uncomfortable bits of Star Wars history as Din Djarin attempts to track down Moff Gideon so he can rescue the wee baby Grogu from Imperial clutches. Now, we're going to break down all of the many references, deep cuts, Easter eggs, connections, so on and so forth that you might have missed, but in order to do so, we need to spoil the living daylights out of this episode. So if you haven't watched this week's episode of The Mandalorian yet, why not make like Migs Mayfeld and comply with your new directive to leave?
Okay, alright.
Alright, are all the spoiler phobes gone? Great, let's get into it, shall we? The episode begins in the scenic, rusty hellscape of the Carthon Chop Field, which is apparently where the New Republic sends a bunch of its prisoners to work off their time in a TIE fighter junkyard filled with more AT-ATs turned into cranes. Here we find known space Bostonian and ex-Imperial sharpshooter Migs Mayfeld as played by Bill Burr, who's working off his crimes from Season 1's episode Chapter 6, The Prisoner, now in the New Republic's Chop Shop.
No!
Much to his surprise, Marshal of the New Republic Cara Dune shows up to take him into her custody and leads him directly to the Slave One, where his relief at seeing Boba Fett in shockingly fresh armor is immediately crushed by his panic at seeing the Mando.
You know, for a second I thought you were this other guy.
They need Migs' knowledge of the Empire to find the coordinates of Moff Gideon's cruiser, but to do so, Migs needs to access an Imperial terminal which sends them on a mission to Morak, a brand new forested planet where the Imperial Remnant is secretly mining Rhydonium. Now, Rhydonium is a highly volatile, explosive starship fuel, and it's appeared numerous times in Star Wars The Clone Wars, as well as in Star Wars Rebels. It first appeared in the Clone Wars episode Missing in Action as part of a separatist plot to blow up a Republic cruiser, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end well for the Separatists. Once on Morak, our motley crew of Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, Din Djarin, Cara Dune, and Migs Mayfeld decide the best way to smuggle Migs inside is to hijack a Rhydonium transport, which based on their Juggernaut call signs appears to be some sort of modified version of the HCVW A9 turbo tank that we first saw in Rogue One. These look longer and skinnier, designed for hauling cargo rather than soldiers, but hey, maybe it's new. There's just one problem, though. According to Migs, Imperial Remnant bases are run by ex-ISB, or Imperial Security Bureau if you nasty, meaning they're going to conduct a genetic scan, and if your DNA shows up on a New Republic register, your cover's blown. Fennec reveals that she is wanted by the ISB, Boba Fett mentions they might recognize his face, and Cara Dune is, well, literally a Marshal of the New Republic, which leaves Migs and Mando. With Cara Dune's help, they hijack the transport and squeeze into these gray and red stormtrooper uniforms that kind of look like an updated version of the Imperial combat drivers that we first saw in The Empire Strikes Back, as well as throughout Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, the shame. Well, that right there is worth the price of admission.
We soon learn the crucial piece of info that if they drive too fast or too unsteadily, the Rhydonium will explode and turn our hero into well done Djarin. They also come across a local village of humans who look at the Empire with disdain. Migs takes this opportunity to wax poetic about the nature of imperialism and how invaders on their land is all we are. He argues about the futility of people dying in wars for the ruling class, be it the Empire or the New Republic. Migs mentions that neither Mandalore nor Alderaan are around anymore, which hopefully isn't literally the case for the former. He tries to tell the Mando that deep down they're the same, noting that when the going gets tough, Din will bend his principles to get the job done, because let's face it, sometimes this is the way just gets in the way. Case in point, Migs ribs Din over whether or not he can't take off his Mandalorian helmet or he can't show his face after Din removes his helmet to disguise himself as a stormtrooper. Seems like a double standard as far as Mayfeld's concerned.
Is it that you can't take off your Mando helmet or you can't show your face? Because there is a difference.
Everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy, Migs says. As far as I'm concerned, if you can make it through your day and still sleep at night, you're doing better than most. Now, this just may seem like a bit of philosophical banter to pad out the episode, but it will have larger implications as we will soon see later on. From here, the pace picks up quite rapidly as other Rhydonium transports begin exploding thanks to local pirates using thermal detonators to blow the juggernauts to smithereens. And as my old colleague Luke Y. Thompson astutely noted, this episode seemingly pays homage to William Friedkin's 1977 thriller Sorcerer, in which a group of outcasts must transport dynamite that is sweating nitroglycerin and constantly on the verge of exploding, which is just the worst kind of dynamite to transport.
Are you seriously shooting a blaster near Rhydonium?
Climbing on top of the vehicle, Mando does his best Mad Max Fury Road impression, fighting off an increasingly preposterous amount of pirates until they're saved not by Deus Ex-Wing Machina, but rather by TIE fighters, marking one of the very few times in Star Wars history they haven't meant extremely bad news for our heroes. A squadron of shore troopers and stormtroopers rush out of the base to mop up the remaining pirates as Din and Migs ride in like conquering heroes, meekly saluting the unassuming soldiers and engineers, and once inside they spot a terminal in the officers' hall, but Migs gets cold feet because he spots his old commanding officer Valen Hess, as played by Richard Brake. As Migs tells Din the terminal entails a facial scan, that means he needs to remove his helmet, bending one of those rules of his once more now that things are well and truly desperate. With Grogu's fate hanging in the balance, Din does take off his helmet, showing us Pedro Pascal's handsome face, but he manages to attract Valen Hess's attention in doing so. Hess grills the Mando for his designation and TK number, which obviously the Mando doesn't have, but thankfully the smooth-talking Mig swoops in and does save the day. He spins a yarn about how they just called Din Old Brown Eyes and notes that he's hard of hearing after his vessel lost pressure in Tanab, a lush planet first mentioned in the Return of the Jedi novelization where Lando Calrissian supposedly defeated a bunch of pirates. Migs makes an unexpected Office Space reference for some reason about TPS reports.
Come on, let's go fill out those TPS reports.
But Valen insists they join him for a drink because they are the only crew that made it back to base with a load of Rhydonium intact. When Valen asks what they should drink to, Migs proposes a toast to Operation Cinder, which was the systematic devastation of Imperial planets in the weeks following the Battle of Endor. It first appeared in the comic book Shattered Empire #2 and played a major role in Star Wars Battlefront 2. It was basically Palpatine's scorched earth policy to ensure mass destruction and the fact that the Empire would not survive without him. Migs reveals that he served in Burnin Khan, another planet the Empire exploited for its mineable resources and one of the many targets of Operation Cinder. Hess's orders killed countless people there in mere moments during that mission, including Mayfeld's entire division, which was somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 soldiers, not to mention all the civilians that perished. Hess argues that it's a small sacrifice for the greater good, but Mayfeld isn't buying it. All those people, the ones that died, was it good for them, he asks? The civilians, the mudscuffers who died defending their homes? For a show that deals with the inexorable march of space fascism, it's one of the most overtly political moments of the season, and a nice way to show how there are those who were in the Empire who are still reckoning with the scope of the atrocities they helped commit. Hess then reveals that the Rhydonium they delivered will give the Empire the destructive force necessary to commit even bigger, deadlier war crimes. You see, boys, he tells them, everybody thinks they want freedom, but what they really want is order. And when they realize that, they're going to welcome us back with open arms. Thankfully, Migs says what we're all thinking and blows a hole through Hess's chest. The catharsis, though, is short-lived because our dynamic duo must make a daring escape from a facility that is chock-a-block with stormtroopers. In a moment straight out of a video game, Fennec Shand and Cara Dune provide sniper fire, taking out stormtroopers and anti-aircraft gunners to clear a path for our heroes to rendezvous with Boba Fett on the roof of the facility for exfiltration. Once aboard the Slave One, Migs makes a killer cycler rifle shot to detonate the Rhydonium and the Imperial facility along with it, and then a pair of TIE fighters chase after the Slave One, but Boba Fett makes like his daddy Jango in Attack of the Clones and drops a seismic charge between them. Soon it's cloudy with a chance of meat. Not meatballs, just meat, because they die a truly horrible death. With their mission complete and Moff Gideon's coordinates secured, the Mando and Cara Dune grant Mayfeld his freedom, remarking how tragic it was that he died in that factory explosion. Wink.
Does that mean I can go? Because I will.
And now that he got a few things off his chest, hopefully Mayfeld can live a much more peaceful existence, at least as much so as any anger-filled man from Boston can ever truly hope to.
Yeah, forget it. Just take me back to the scrapyard. I'm not doing that.
The episode ends unexpectedly with the Mando leaving Moff Gideon a very angry voicemail, throwing the Imperial officer's words from Chapter 7 right back at him. You may think you have some idea what you're in possession of, but you do not. Presumably, we'll see the resolution of this threat in the next episode, which is the season finale, and it promises to be a real barn burner based on everything that we've seen thus far.
Highly volatile and explosive.
Yeah, kind of like this one, huh?
And there you have it, folks. That is our breakdown. That's everything you need to know about this week's episode of The Mandalorian. But tell me, what did you think about The Believer? Did you spot any Easter eggs that we missed? And what do you think is going to happen in the season finale? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.